Everything else feels like truly either already hollowed out or in the process
I mean,
of
our
being hollowed
economy
out.
is like largely running on the idea of like a super smart robot that's gonna like come down from the sky and fix everything. Like that's literally like a economically relevant idea. Is that like there's about to be a super smart robot? Like
Well,
that's an incredibly
yeah, you're
important
right.
concept in the like functioning of the U.S. economy.
Right, right. And
And who knows that robot might be able to get the oil like really fast. Like why not?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, kind of on
so
that note, there's a little bit actually of an intersection of that kind of new tech fuckery and Venezuela that I stumbled on just this morning. I was doing a little last minute research, and I don't know how directly relevant this is to like the actual, the ultimate like operation that just happened, but I think it's like an instructive and intriguing case study of sus like Silicon Valley people interfacing with Venezuela and kind of trying to like infiltrate it at the highest levels and use some of their new favorite technologies to be catalysts for change. And I got to give a shout out to Recluse from the farm because he's the only person I heard so far that like mentioned this story in terms of like people that could have sold out Maduro. Recluse had mentioned that I think somebody that was like had a position in his cabinet. I forget if it was like information minister or something like that. I don't know if they're in their cabinet now, but I guess was like exposed to being like as being like a DEA informant at some point in the recent past. But the other person, this person is like very interesting, and I can't find like any information about like what they've been up to maybe the last like 2 or 3 years, but they were a pretty big name that was getting a lot of big legacy press coverage like in the late 2010s. And that's this young millennial guy named Jimenez. Gabriel Jimenez. Or as his friends and co-founders call him, Gabo. So yeah, Recluse had mentioned that there was a guy that was brought into the Maduro government in the late 2010s to work on the a state cryptocurrency project called Petro, right? I kind of remember this being announced where Maduro was launching like a state cryptocurrency backed by their oil that was going to be used to like sell oil and like evade US sanctions and whatever. And the brainchild of Petro was this young, I think at the time, like 27-year-old Gabriel Jimenez, who moved to Venezuela and like worked with the government, but then had like a strange falling out. Anyways, eventually I think left Venezuela, but then kind of pops up a couple years later. Maybe I think he took a couple trips to Silicon Valley, might have met some interesting people, and he launches this thing called the Reserve Protocol, which is like a new kind of stable coin that is being he co-founds it with this other guy who I found a bunch of sus videos about, who's like the guy who's running it now, Nevin Freeman, who in his video notes on Reserve backstory, like right out of the gate is like, let me tell you about this incredible movement called effective altruism.
mhm.
The EA movement like has endeavored to like make the world a better place. I think this video is from like a few years ago, so they were still much more like mask off about being EA freaks. But I think Recluse described this cryptocurrency that got involved in like Venezuelan shit as like Zizian adjacent. And I think this is what he meant by it, is that like it was co-founded like an effective altruist, like sus millennial, and this guy Jimenez, who had created the Petro, but then had a falling out with the Venezuelan government, and went because anyways. There's been there were a lot of profiles written about Jimenez when like a lot of the protests during Trump 1 were happening that were talking about his starry-eyed vision for building like a national cryptocurrency, and then how the evil dictator Maduro showed up at his apartment with guns and like basically violated the holy crypto rules of like transparency and blockchain to like say we wanted backdoors to like actually make things private. And it's like kind of like, what do you think? Like, you gave a cryptocurrency to a government, of course they're going to do that. Like, but like this guy is very. The more I kept reading about Jimenez, like the more sus this whole thing kind of got. Like, let me see. There was an article from 2022. From restofworld.org. global tech stories. This is this is one of the more recent updates on like what he's up to. It says a U.S. company created a crypto community in Venezuela. Now it has thousands of volunteers. These reserve rangers are fighting for financial autonomy in their embattled country, but their community isn't as decentralized as they think. So it talks about these people that have gotten, like these Venezuelans who have gotten into this app called Reserve, a U.S.-based cryptocurrency exchange platform created by American entrepreneur Nevin Freeman in 2017 and backed by prominent funders such as Peter Thiel, Y Combinator's Sam Altman, and Coinbase. When the company launched in Venezuela in 2019, people like Hidalgo, one of the people they talked to, started depositing money and digitally transferring U.S. dollars and Venezuelan bolivares back and forth without an exchange fee. Today, it can be used as a payment method at stores all across Venezuela and for transferring money between friends, like PayPal or Venmo. By relying on cryptocurrency, the platform skirts many regulations of traditional exchanges like banks or Western Union, giving around 600,000 Venezuelans access to currencies and providing Reserve with a daily transaction volume of $5 million. And it talks about like it's like a refuge from hyperinflation, you know, that's why a lot of people got like turned on to it. It talks about, decentralization, and like why that's such a cool idea. Here's a little interesting. This almost sounds like they're doing some well shit here. Hidalgo is part of an exclusive server called R Club, where the Rangers organize events and strategize ways to onboard new users. It currently has almost 2,700 members. There, he spends about an hour a day on reserve-related activities. Another Caracas-based ranger, Carlos Mijares, told Rest of World that he often logs 5 hours a day. They'll either spend time on social media interacting with other rangers. Hidalgo set up a Twitter account specifically for the purpose, or register family and friends on Reserve. Hidalgo recently left his job at McDonald's, partly to spend more time with the community. So another ranger in Caracas told the Rest of World that the community is completely decentralized. It's our own initiative. It has nothing to do with the company. It's our own need. It's like a group of friends. Despite perceptions of decentralization among the Rangers, Reserve executives said that the feeling is intentional and not exactly true. According to Gabriel Jimenez, Reserve's chief operating officer and the former developer of Venezuela's government-backed Petro crypto project, the Rangers are actually coordinated by the Reserve staff. Jimenez understands money as a social phenomenon, and so set out to build not just a technology that would benefit Venezuela, but a community around it that would help spread it. We were selling an emotion, he told Rest of World. Jimenez said the company implemented many of the mechanics that led to the growth of the Rangers, such as gamifying the R Club server with giveaways in different levels to attract new members and spur engagement, as well as creating other spaces for Rangers to congregate in messaging platforms like WhatsApp and Telegram. He even introduced the public signifiers of the community, from the dollar bill with wings emoji to the name Ranger itself, which he borrowed from a different crypto group. Jimenez estimates the company now employs approximately 60 official staff members in the country, many of them community managers working to guide the voluntarily associated Rangers, who Jimenez claims number upwards of 20,000 users. We keep it centralized, he said. This dynamic is replicated in other decentralized spaces, as control tends to concentrate among powerful users or the company itself. In late June, Chainalysis released a report finding that even in major DAOs, less than 1% of all holders have 90% of voting power. If too few users can create a proposal, the community may come to feel that decentralized governance rings false. I guess. This has become like a marketing term about decentralization, but actually it's very crafted by this young hotshot Jimenez to create this sense of online community, where people can just like hide in their little private discords and get rich off crypto. Like, this is all starting to sound a little bit, like sus, especially when you go back to profiles of him in like 2018. There was a really like melodramatic one, actually from 2020, that was called The Coder and the Dictator. Gabriel Jimenez hated the Venezuelan Okay, so hold up. Didn't we just hear that he worked with the Venezuelan government to develop Petro? But actually, the story's a little more complicated. It says he hated the Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro, but he loved cryptocurrency. When he built the regime, a digital coin, he nearly paid with his life. So yeah, this is a long article about his beautiful, struggle and in his late 20s where he moves to Venezuela, et cetera, et cetera. And actually, he talked about in this article. It says that that he acknowledged the danger of working for evil Maduro, but he talked about the Petro as a Trojan horse that would sneak in the kind of reforms that he and the opposition had been dreaming about for years. And so, he basically says, this is what he told the Times. He found himself negotiating directly with Mr. Maduro and his top deputies, who often praised his ingenuity, before escalating threats to Mr. Jimenez's life drove him into exile. Quote, "The actual goal of the project was to change the economic model of the oppressive regime," he told the Times. "This was my mission and my gamble, in a bet that ended costing everything I had in my life, my friends, my partners, my reputation, my love, my company, and my country." Mr. Jimenez has been identified as the author of the Petro before, but he's never told his story. So he actually has a very interesting early life. His father, I was able to find, was actually not long before this kid goes on his Petro adventure. His father was indicted. Let me see if I can pull it up here. He was the former owner of a Dominican Republic bank who was sentenced to 3 years in prison for a money laundering conspiracy involving Venezuelan government officials. So this is Gabriel Jimenez's father in 2018, literally the same time that he pops up in Venezuela during the crypto boom to roll out this idea for the Petro, which the Maduro regime or the Maduro government brings him in on, is interested in. What the fuck is going on here exactly? This is the sussest thing ever, right? This kid has he's funded, and then he goes on to be funded by Peter Thiel and Sam Altman and a bunch of effective altruists. And he openly talks about after, his adventure, which he says is Maduro, he was such an oppressive dictator and he, I had to flee for my life. And it's yeah, dude, because you're a CIA asset. I don't know. It's
well, I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing that is going to proliferate. That type of thing can happen instantly. You know what I mean? Which basically this is all a grift, more or less. Cryptocurrency, these sort of crypto scams, for lack of a better word, or they're the ultimate sort of example what we were just talking about, where they just generate wealth out of thin air. They're pump and dump shit. That type of thing can totally swoop in and take advantage of this situation, with sort of the imprimatur of the Rubio government in Venezuela,
right. And
so
actually I think there's a Newsweek article about him. I'm trying to bring it because there's an interesting little bio about him. This is back from March 2018. Meet Gabriel Jimenez, Venezuela's cryptocurrency genius and former Congress intern. Gee, I wonder who he interned for in Congress. Let's find out. So, a former U.S. congressional intern has become the driving force behind a new digital currency in Venezuela. Gabriel Jimenez, 27, is the founder of The Social Us, a digital innovation startup that is helping Venezuela overcome what President Nicolas Maduro has called the financial blockade of the U.S. government. Petro is the cryptocurrency that Maduro hopes can save the country's economy from hyperinflation. Maduro appeared on TV last month with Jimenez and Russian businessmen to sign a contract opening Petro to international buyers. But who is Jimenez and where did he come from? A self-described innovation enthusiast, Jimenez is a lawyer who worked at a bank with his father in the Dominican Republic. After the bank collapsed in 2014, his father was charged with fraud, and Jimenez started traveling to the U.S. And his father was eventually convicted and sentenced to jail for money laundering in collusion with certain there's that corruption, Venezuelan officials, right? The call is coming from inside the house, Gabriel. Anyways, he spent summers studying at Harvard and George Mason before landing an internship in Washington that had him working for Miami Republican Ileana Rose Latinin. More on her in a second. He spent 5 months in the capital and was highly critical of Maduro and his government. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, Jimenez wanted to gain, quote, knowledge and experience about the defense of democracy. But all that changed when Jimenez started working with Maduro for the Petro. Ross Latinin has even condemned her former employee. Quote, Gabriel came to our office and said he wanted to learn how to support freedom and democracy, she said in a statement, according to the SF Chronicle. Like, don't worry. Like, he hasn't given up the faith.
Like, also,
I don't think.
I'm
what the fuck is this?
Like, where did Venezuela come into his story? Like, why?
Well, he was born there. He is technically
he was
Venezuelan,
okay.
but it seems like he grew up kind of abroad, and his dad moved to the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, I see. If he was born there,
he's kind of an international child.
I see it. Okay.
Right. So she goes on to say, instead, it appears he is using the freedoms that the United States provided him in order to help advance the Maduro regime's attempts to consolidate power and destroy Venezuela's democratic institutions. Those who worked to support the Maduro regime and provided a financial lifeline have chosen their lot and should expect to face the full consequences of turning against their people. This classic Miami Republican congresswoman. So, like, at this point, they're like, oh, he's turned on us and worked for evil Maduro. But
well, this is like exactly the mentality where it's like anything like that, like, because anyway, sorry, keep going.
I just want to point out that Ileana Rose Latinin, I guess her husband is like Finnish or something, but she comes from an interesting family. She was born in Havana, Cuba, to Enrique Rose, who later became a businessman and an anti-Fidel Castro activist, and his wife, Amanda Adado. They immigrated to the United States when Ileana was 7 years old. It does mention here on Enrique Rose's thing, I think he hosted a radio show on Radio y Televisión Martí, the U.S. government-funded broadcaster aimed at Cuba. He was a strong advocate of retaining the U.S. embargo against Cuba. And he is also a Bay of Pigs veteran and historian of the exile struggle. So she's literally the daughter of a like Brigada 2506 like Bay of Pigs invader, like CIA asset guy. And so this guy, basically Jimenez goes to intern for her and is like sounding like a total like Marco Rubio neocon about how he wants to defend democracy and whatever,
which I'm sure is true. Like, I'm sure that like he is like a huge sus lord, but even this cryptocurrency scheme is like too much.
Well, no.
Like,
here's the thing. But here's the thing to keep in mind about it is that like even talking in 2020 after he was chased out of the country, after like Maduro started to realize that he was sus, like he's like, oh, I completely intended it as a Trojan horse to expose Venezuelan government corruption and blah blah blah. So like he was doing an op basically. Like Petro was like an op. It seems that he somehow finagled Maduro and like his advisors to kind of jump on board with for a while as like an out of the box cool solution using crypto to like skirt sanctions and whatever. And then this kid ends up being, I think I would venture to guess, like a intelligence related plant of some kind to go in there. And he even like brags about it. Like so many CIA assets, in places like Cuba, like would brag about what they did. Like it's on his Wikipedia. He's a Bay of Pigs veteran, like he's proud of it, and then he, not only does he get kind of driven out of the country, which is basically, described at length in this like long, glowing New York Times profile of him. But then he comes back around with this new thing that's funded by Peter Thiel and Sam Altman called the Reserve Protocol, which then like by 2022 acquires a kind of, it's almost like he first tried to get in the official government route and he got caught like red-handed and had to like flee.
Do you think what's her name was like in on it and that she said that as part, or do you like
good
do you
question?
Think it's possible that this guy like did this like thinking that like it would work in some way and then like, or that it would at least make him a bunch of money, and then he kind of spun it as like, I did this on purpose, like, or
So far from what I've read from him, that's not the vibe I'm getting. The vibe I'm getting is that he wanted to subvert the Maduro government, and this was like a really neat and clever way of using crypto to do it.
Previous like statements,
like
but,
all of his previous statements and his post statements are like, I am like basically an anti-Maduro Venezuelan dissident, and like I want to expose this evil regime and like overthrow it, and I also am partnering with like I'm doing like effective altruist, like,
I mean, it
shit,
is
you
weird,
know what
though,
I mean?
that like all the reception for it, like at the time, it wasn't like a lot of people like who looked at the currency like perceived it as like a scam,
Well, here's
so
what
it's weird that like it wasn't a good scam, you know what I mean? Like it didn't trick anybody.
It ultimately didn't. Maybe let me read a little bit from like the context of how he got kind of wrapped up, how he got in a relationship with the government, like doing it.
For access to the full-length episode, subscribe to the Hour of Frequency at patreon.com/subliminaljihad.